Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unmute. Now, as most of you were probably sleeping early Saturday morning after a long, lovely dinner of New Year's leftovers, President Trump was up to something very different. And I want to share my thoughts and try to give you a short overview of the entire situation happening in Venezuela. Now, as I'm sure most of you have known, Venezuela used to be a very beautiful country, but then it became overrun with socialism. And for all my young college friends, don't buy the college scam that socialism is great, because we're going to be looking at a prime example today why socialism is not the best form of government there is. Because now Venezuela is filled with abuse by the government, by the police force, starvation, and the list goes on and on. And I want to give you a really quick snapshot of actually how bad the abuse is in Venezuela. I'll stop it right there. What you just saw is government tanks ramming protesters in a crowd. This was not appearing to be a violent crowd, but nonetheless, this should not be done by the government to go and kill people with vehicles by running through crowds with tanks. And that's just a little snapshot of what was actually happening in Venezuela. On January 3rd, our military flew to Venezuela and captured the president and his wife. They have brought them back to the United States to face federal charges. Now, this, to my knowledge, hasn't really been done before. We've never gone and physically captured the president of another country, then brought him back to the United States to charge him under the United States Court of Law. It's unprecedented. It's wild. And I want to get into a few opinions that people have about this. The U.S. operation was dubbed Operation Absolute Resolve, and it involved air and special force strikes in and around Caracas. Now, I want to play you a video that the White House released, kind of summing up the entire thing, and of course it had their own editing flair on it, so it's kind of fun, but we'll watch it here.
Venga por mí.
Last night, on the order of the President of the United States,
Aquí lo esperan Miraflores.
and in support of a request from the Department of Justice,
No se tarde en llegar.
the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro.
Cobarde.
Nicolas Maduro had his chance until he didn't. He effed around and he found out.
This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history.
Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, you know, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. But don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office, because it's not going to turn out well.
So at the beginning there, you saw President Maduro actually challenging either the United States or other countries to come after him, come and get me, and mocking them. And then what Secretary Rubio was saying is that President Trump, if you challenge him to do something or he says he's going to do it, he's going to do it. And that is one thing I like about President Trump, is whether you agree with what he does or not, or you agree with him or not, he says what he's going to do. And he's very frank with the American people, which is a dose of honesty that I think was due for the American people that we haven't had with presidents in the past, especially the last one. There was a lot of talk and no action, and unfortunately a lot of the action didn't benefit the American people. But as we see here, if Trump talks, he means it. Now, another thing that was definitely shown through this Venezuela government invasion, essentially, was how strong the United States military is. The stealth of the United States military. And I think this was one of the reasons that we carried out this operation. It obviously wasn't the main one, but it was showing other countries that we can do whatever we want, whenever we want, without having people who we don't want knowing what's going on. That's how secretive, how stealthy, how brave, how much courage is in the United States military. And the fact that they're able to go and land U.S. military helicopters on this Venezuelan base, they were attacked, no U.S. personnel died, captured the president and his wife, safely land back in the United States, all within a few hours, is absolutely mind-blowing. Afterwards, obviously everyone had a lot of questions, because we captured the president of Venezuela, and now Venezuela doesn't even have a president. And it wasn't until the press conference that we actually knew who was running Venezuela, and that came even more of a shock to the American people and to the media, because President Trump, and there was a few clips from that press conference, said that the United States will temporarily run Venezuela. Now, that again bothered some people, because it's the United States who needs to worry about the United States running an entirely different country. However, if we look at Venezuela, they're quite enjoying this. They're happy. Yes, they are happy that their president and his wife was captured and brought to the United States, which goes to show how bad of a president this was. Additionally, this president, you might hear people say that he was a duly elected president. He wasn't. He was not a duly elected president. Often in socialist countries, these elections are fixed, so no matter what the people vote, the president is going to win the re-election. So I want to go to a couple clips of what the people are actually doing in Venezuela. So that was Venezuelan citizens tearing down a sign of their former president, Maduro, in Venezuela, because the socialist president have a big billboard or sign up, and obviously it was probably, I would assume, illegal to even touch that sign. And they're tearing these signs down, not because they loved this president, but because they absolutely hated him, and they hated what he did to his citizens. Let's go to another example. Again, what you saw there is the Venezuelan citizens tearing down a statue of Maduro. Once again, not because they liked him, but because they hated him. They hated him as their president. They don't have to listen to this evil dictator anymore because the United States captured him. If you made it this far, you might be enjoying the content, so I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who you think might be interested in the situation going on in Venezuela and would be interested in more faith-forward commentary. Also, if you click that notification bell, that tremendously helps my channel, so I would appreciate it, and let's get back to the video. So after the capture, even though President Trump said that we were going to run Venezuela, actually the vice president of Venezuela, President Rodriguez, was sworn in as the interim president by the Venezuelan Supreme Tribunal of Justice. Now, I've heard from different sources that she is supposedly more democratic than Maduro was, so we will see. I hope that she will start working with President Trump, and she will have a lot more respect for the Venezuelan citizens than Maduro did. Now, we've seen how Venezuelans were celebrating what happened. Let's check up on the liberals. So in case you couldn't hear, what they exactly were cheering was "Hands off Venezuela," obviously directed at the president. Now, this is very different than how the Venezuelans were celebrating the capture of their own president. They were cheering because he was such an abusive dictator. But us Americans, no, we're telling our president, hands off Venezuela. It shows how uninformed so many people are. And unfortunately, these protests are happening in many major cities across the country. And I want to take a look at an interview where someone went and interviewed some of these protesters, and let's hear the reasons of why they're protesting.
You should check out that communist flag over there.
What brings you out here today?
I'm organized with the Revolutionary Communists of America.
Stop it right there. He's organized with the Revolutionary Communists of America.
We're out here to say hands off Venezuela, and we unequivocally stand with the people of Venezuela against U.S. imperialist aggression.
Stands with the people of Venezuela against American imperialists. Well, the people of Venezuela aren't standing with him, and it's ironic that he's part of Communists of America, which is a step actually after socialism, where socialism is even worse. And he's standing with the people of Venezuela because they loved socialism so much, as we already have seen. Not.
U.S. imperialist aggression.
What do you think about the people of Venezuela celebrating on the streets?
What?
What do you think about the people of Venezuela celebrating on the streets today?
I saw images of Venezuelans being bombed.
So it's very important to point out right here that he's obviously misinformed, that millions of Venezuelans were celebrating on the streets. But then he said, oh, I actually saw videos of Venezuelans being bombed. The United States wasn't just recklessly bombing Venezuela. We were striking the military base so we could go and get the president at Caracas. We weren't just casually striking all of Venezuela to capture one person. Our military is a little more stealthy than that.
Yeah, I think you should
Can
definitely
you show me the bombings that you're talking about? I didn't see
I
any.
don't know. I just saw it on Reddit. It was on the front page of the internet.
Reddit.
So
Okay.
I don't know.
And then he says he got his news source from Reddit, which might be part of the problem.
U.S.
Here, the
imperialism.
people
Oh, yeah.
celebrating on the streets here. What do you think about that?
I mean, at the end of the day, I stand with the people of Venezuela against U.S. imperialism. The U.S. has no right to bomb the people of Venezuela. The U.S. has no right to kidnap another leader of...
So then the interviewer pulls up pictures or videos on his phone of the Venezuelans celebrating. He says, why are they celebrating? He says, oh, I don't know. Do you have a correspondent? Everyone knows. Venezuelans around the world are celebrating, and I'll show you more videos of that.
Venezuela. The U.S. has no right to kidnap another
Why are
leader
they
of
all
another...
celebrating? Why are they celebrating?
You know, I don't know. Do you have a correspondent there who can ask? I'm
trying to
here
get
demonstrating
out there, but the
against.
airspace
I'm here
is
demonstrating against U.S. imperialism and the U.S. intervention.
Is this AI?
Thank you to the Nate Friedman Show for that interview. It is very insightful, and obviously, maybe some of the protesters are more informed. I'm not saying all the protesters would have answered this the exact same way. However, the principle is still the same. We have Americans who are mad about the capture of this president, while the people of its own country are celebrating, chanting, and tearing down statues of the president in the streets. So even anyone holding up a sign is obviously misinformed of the situation by mainstream media. You might say, well, Joshua, is this actually legal? Can he just go and capture other presidents? And did he need to have congressional approval or a declaration of war? Well, let's look back at some past precedent. No, not by Republicans, but let's look at Democrats. Obama killed Osama bin Laden with no congressional approval. None. Obama invaded Libya, and the operation killed Gaddafi with no approval. Biden killed the al-Qaeda leader in 2022 with no congressional approval. But Trump swoops in and brings the man alive back to the United States, and U.S. Democrats are mad. They said he needed approval when Obama literally had a military strike killing a U.S. citizen with no approval. Democrats weren't mad then. Strange. A set of rules for them and a set of rules for us. Unfortunately, that's how it often is in politics, and it's not right. So again, let's check back with the Venezuelans. What are they still doing? Here, you see millions of Venezuelans crowding the streets to celebrate the capture. Again, while U.S. Democrats are mad with their cardboard signs in the streets, protesting the capture, saying hands off Venezuela. Well, Venezuela would disagree. Again, we can see even more celebration, specifically for President Trump from Venezuelans. Take a look. They're obviously playing the YMCA theme, Trump's iconic theme song, while celebrating the capture of Maduro. So why are Democrats and Venezuelans in disagreement even when Democrats say they're standing for Venezuela? I'll let you answer that on your own. So now we come to a bit more of the meat of the issue, and that's two main things that led to this capture. One of those was oil sales. And let's take a look at President Trump's statement, and this is put out by Fox News. It was his Truth Social about this. He said, quote, "I am pleased to announce that the interim authorities in Venezuela will be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of high-quality sanctioned oil to the United States of America. This oil will be sold at market price, and that money will be controlled by me as the President of the United States to ensure it is used for the benefit of the people of Venezuela and of the United States. I have asked Energy Secretary Chris Wright to execute this plan immediately. It will be taken by storage ships and brought directly to unloading docks in the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter." So, a little bit of background. Venezuela has actually essentially stolen through trade millions and millions of dollars of U.S. oil. And that was one of the motivations President Trump had, is he wanted to get that back. And according to AP News, the U.S. has actually already seized, as of now, Venezuelan oil tankers and is easing some of the sanctions to facilitate the control and sale of Venezuelan oil. And President Trump actually says that the interim president or the interim government of Venezuela is working with him on that. We have to keep in mind that a lot of the Maduro people, like the people over the military and the police and so on, are still in Venezuela, still have power in Venezuela. And this headline came from Fox News, and it says Maduro regime launches nationwide manhunt for those who supported the U.S. in arrest. So all those millions we saw celebrating, the Maduro regime, the government, is going after those people. So I would ask you to join me in prayer for those people who simply celebrated the capture and the end of the president's term, who was not rightfully elected president, who was abusing its citizens, who was starving them, and so on. Now, what are my thoughts about the whole situation? There's so many moving parts of this that it's really hard. Number one, is it America first? Ultimately, the people elected President Trump by an America first platform.
America first. America first.
That's what he ran on. Is it America first? Well, the portion of the oil and the drugs being all the drugs that have been trafficked into the United States from Venezuela, killing American citizens, that part, absolutely. Yes, that aspect of this entire situation is America first, because we're getting back our oil that was rightfully ours, and to stop a lot of trade of drugs that were coming into the United States, killing United States citizens. So yes, that aspect definitely is America first. Are we now in another foreign conflict, though? Yeah. No, we weren't at odds as far as like on the ground with Venezuela before January 3rd. And now we are. It's just a fact that we have to own up to. Is this more, shall we say, ammunition for Democrats? While it shouldn't be, they're using it as ammunition. They're using it to attack the president and his administration, and I don't see why, but it's apparently working because mainstream media is on their side. Is this more foreign entanglement overall? Yes, it is, which I think is the opposite that the America First crowd actually wanted to see in the Trump administration. We wanted less foreign entanglement, but that's not quite what we're getting, especially with this specific situation. Is this what we voted for overall? Well, that's a little bit of a complicated one, Because you see, the reason people voted for Trump was largely to fix the economy, to bring down inflation, to close the southern border. Those were the main things he ran on. To actually get us out of foreign entanglements, not get us into more. So that's a hard question to answer. Was it the right time to do this? I don't know. I don't know if it was the right time necessarily, because we see we have very consequential midterms coming up in November, which means that you have to be very careful about what you say and what you do leading up to those, because so many Americans are in the middle of whether they're going to vote for the Republicans or Democrats. And since obviously a lot of the Republicans have come out in support of what President Trump's done, and a lot of the Democrats have come out against what Trump has done, this could impact those elections. And if Republicans don't keep the House and the Senate and people don't get out to vote, that could be consequential. Now, lastly, I don't want to be talking about this a year from now. I don't want Republicans to be talking about this a year from now. And my concern is that we will be. It is going to be an ongoing situation, another entanglement that the United States has got itself into. That's where my concern lies. Again, I don't want to be talking about this in a year. I don't want it to affect the midterms. Nobody can even deny, that's being intellectually honest, that this is having good results for Venezuela. That's objectively true. But is it good for the conservative movement? And does it support the America First platform? I don't know. Tell me what you think in the comments.